So I've talked before about how hard it is to get a job, how I think there's something wrong with the premise of a person needing work to survive, but then having to go through all this extraneous nonsense for the sake of possibly starting to work somewhere. But I've never really talked about the effect being unemployed can have on someone's mental health, and I think that's an interesting thing to discuss. Now, there was a person that came on one of my videos, and I was talking about how at my last job, the one I was with for the longest, the restaurant one, I had gotten to a point with the managers where, specifically the hiring one, or the lead manager, the one that was like running the whole place, where she would say hi to me, I wouldn't say anything back, because I was upset that for the last 6 months that I was there, I was getting 2 shifts and then 1 shift. And this guy came on there and he wrote something to the effect of, when you work somewhere, you should always try your best. And when I read that, I was so disgusted that I got rid of it, because for me, I know I had tried my best when I worked there. This was a place where, when I first started, before we had the wage increase, I would arrive at 5 in the afternoon and sometimes be there until 2 or 3 in the morning. As their dishwasher, which is like the primary thing I would do, I would have to clean every single dish, or else I couldn't go home. Uh, Now, later on, when they started giving us the half shifts, that became a little bit different. They would put somebody else on there with me to speed it up. But the idea here is that I did that for, with every, as hard as I could every time, right? I came multiple times for shifts that I was not scheduled for, to fill in for somebody else that got sick, didn't decide not to come in. Their bicycle had a tire that was flat, whatever. And the reward I received for trying my best was to have my hours cut. First, from about 30 every week, and then eventually 15 to 10 after the wage increase, and then by the end, 4 or 5 a week. And I feel like when people get upset about losing their job or afraid of losing their job, they're worried that if I don't work here anymore, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, yada, yada, yada. But if you work somewhere where you are paid, or are used, underworked, right? Used so sparingly that you can't damn near afford or really make anything off of being an employee there, you're not going to care anymore. And I remember my second to last day of working there, I had this conversation with the lead manager, and she said, I don't have the hours to give you. And I had to, like, I had stopped myself from bursting out laughing, because I had spoken to several other people who worked there. And the lie that was told to me, right, was that, oh, well, you only get 1 shift a week because you only wash dishes. And then I would speak to these other people who were trained, or I guess equipped in doing other duties, but were still receiving a shift or 2 shifts a week as well. Meaning that being told I had to suddenly, after working somewhere for a year, learn how to do other things wasn't really about, them having some kind of need for people to be equipped in other things, but more so they're not making profits in whatever margin they were trying to get, and their way of getting it back is to just cut up the hours of the people that work for them, to make their part-time employees part-time employees, to save face by just barely using us even more than we were used before. So I didn't fall for that. I got out of there, and it hurt. It hurt to work somewhere. They would say, oh, we appreciate you. You don't appreciate an employee that you use once a week when they have 6 days of availability, and they're getting used a single time every 7 days. That's somebody that you don't care about. They're a body that is thrown in the mix every fourth of a month. If somebody else calls in sick or doesn't show up, maybe you'll give them a little bit more hours, right? But they're nothing to you. And that was very hurtful. It got to a point where by the time I was in, I'd say, the last 6 or 7 months of working there. I'd mentioned that I used to sit at this place and wash the dishes for, hours on end. And during the closing shifts where they need to clean all this stuff or they can't leave, I just started kind of phoning it in, whatever, I'll splash this, I'll spray this. Because I said to myself, no matter how hard I work, no matter how much of, my effort I put into this, I am going to be rewarded with a single shift every 7 days. A single shift every 7 days that could be on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Sunday, right? You don't know what day it is, but it's not going to be enough to actually pay anything. But you also know that if you try to get a job on top of this one, you can't guarantee you'll be able to work at the other place with any certainty, because they're always going to throw this random shift at a different time each week. So it just became nothing. It was like to have, again, a job is supposed to be something that allows you to take care of yourself, or at the very least you can see a tangible benefit financially from being there, right? So when I first started and was getting my 3 and 4 shifts a week, I was happy. I was, greeting and making jokes and whatnot. But once I got to those last, 6 months, I just couldn't take it anymore. And to have the manager sit there and like threaten to give me a redirective if I don't start saying hi, and like I'm supposed to sit here and care about working somewhere where they only use me once every 7 days. I mean, it felt like a self-parody. It felt like a joke version of a job. It was like reality had not set in for them, that you have made this job nothing to him because you barely use him. So that was that, right? And that we have to do that as the prologue, because that's what's set off the chain of events of me looking for another type of job, or just another job altogether. Now, in the earlier part of this year, I mentioned that employers seemed desperate to me, but I should have said employers for these customer service jobs were the ones who seemed desperate, because that was the main thing I was getting interview after interview with regard to, right? These jobs where they want you to sit in front of some store all day long or knock on people's doors. And my issue with those jobs came down to a couple of things, right? Which were, I think, realistic. I don't feel comfortable knocking on random people's doors at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And I also thought it was ridiculous to have to pay out $200, $300, $400 for clothes to work at these places when they can just get rid of you anytime they want. But to get more into specifically what the application process has been like for me, I'd call it a maze. I'd call it a circus. If we want to go over, their greatest hits, there was a place it was a customer service job. And the thing they like to do is they have you in for these group interviews, and they tell you, oh, call me, and then I'll tell you if you're allowed to come back or whatever. I sit for this group interview. The lady tells me she's going to call me later, right? Calls me at like 4 or 5 o'clock, then sends me a text message. Hey, I need to tell you something. I called you. Call me back. I call her back, no answer. Send her a text message, no answer. So I guess, I don't know, maybe she decided not to go with me because I didn't have my phone strapped to my crotch at 6 o'clock at night. You have the interview. Remember, this is an interview, not actually working somewhere. I talked about them in another video, where they wanted me to, it's a chauffeur job. They wanted me to come in with my driver's license and a printout of my driving record from the DMV. And I told them I couldn't get the printout in the amount of time they gave me, which is, they're calling you the evening before the afternoon where they want to talk to you, so less than 24 hours. And after I go for this interview without the thing, the lady tells me that me getting hired depends on how the people they're currently training are doing. And I just roll my eyes and said, oh, another waste of time. I went to an interview with a delivery driver job where they had me to talk to, the place is 30 miles away from me. I go to this interview, and the guy tells me about how these vans are busted down, and this is not a very good job. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, what the hell is this? Because I'll never understand why the guys interviewing people think it's a good idea to tell them about how bad the job they have, especially when you know that Clearly, it's not that horrible if you're still working here after however many days or weeks or months. But he tells me that the two people that are supposed to be interviewed before me did not show up. And, I hear that, I think, oh, maybe they might actually hire me. And then I leave from there, never hear anything back. So we know how that turned out. I had the interview with that casino company. I think they were liars in terms of, well, first they said they didn't hire me because of my mathematical skills lacking, which I thought was utter nonsense because it's just adding numbers, and then they later on had me apply again and said we're not going through with you. I did a video about them as well. But I guess what I found kind of interesting is that I got to a point where I would sit here Monday through Friday, even sometimes on the weekends too, and go on these different job websites and just send out application after application after application for these different job hosting sites. And what tends to happen more than anything else is most will say nothing back, right? But you'll get about a few, either a day or a week, depending on how many I send out at that time, that will say, thanks for applying, but we have decided to not move forward with your application at this time. And every time I would see one of those, I would always know it was a rejection email because it would say an update on your application from yada, yada, yada. And I thought to myself, oh, that must be this year's gimmick, right? Because I noticed that every year in trying to seek work, there's always a different gimmick. In 2023, it was, oh yeah, we'll hire you, we just are far as hell away, right? There's places that are 30, 40, 50, 60 miles away from me. They are, they're willing to hire me, but nowhere close to me is willing to hire me. So I'd have to move, or I guess just go sleep in the car to be able to work there. Then last year, there was the oh so lovely thing of employers scheduling interviews that they don't show up to, right? Going for an interview at a restaurant and, oh, the manager's not here, but if you keep calling us and they're here, then you can come in for the interview. Oh, yeah, what's her name? I'm supposed to interview, but she's not here. I'll interview you instead. It got so ridiculous. Because what ends up happening is that they either do not interview you in the place the person that was supposed to interview you, or they'll tell you, give me your number, your information, whatever, and then we'll not hire you. We'll talk to you, and then you give them your information and you hear nothing back. So it's just another one of those, like, more time wasting stuff. But I said to myself, when does this change, right? When do we get to a point where you just know up front there's nothing left for you? Because what ends up happening when somebody gets turned down so many times for work, right, is that it sort of creates, what's a good way of putting it, almost an effect where I wouldn't call it a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're still going for interviews, they're still applying for stuff, but it's almost like you can't be convinced that anything you do really makes a difference. As an example, you had my friend who said that, maybe it was my resume, and I said to him, that's a cool idea to have, but when you apply for stuff in person with no resume, or when you apply for stuff and they talk to you and start asking you what job have you had, which means they clearly didn't read what was on the paper that was sent to them, then your resume is of no significance. I did this video on how this older lady who was into the Bible was talking to me, and I kind of mentioned just the issues with unemployment, and she was like, oh, well, next time you go for an interview, make sure you wear this outfit and you have this type of grooming, and I'm just thinking to myself, lady, most of these places, because most of my rejections have been places that do not even speak to me. They see a resume, write name on the list, turn it down, that's it. So we can hyper focus on appearance, but if most places turn you down, don't see what you look like, appearance is not a factor, clearly. And again, it's one of those things where, like, in a conventional sense, I can understand where somebody might think a resume is a big deal, where someone might think, whatever type outfit is a a good idea. But we don't live in conventional times. We are in this extremely digitized era where most applications you put in for these different companies, if they're going to a job that even exists, and we'll get into ghost jobs later, it's being seen by a machine or a computer that is tracking to see if it has some preordained number of skills on there, and if it doesn't, it's going to turn it down. And some people apply and they don't even write their own resume. They have, was it GPT or some AI to do it for them. So it's basically just a bunch of computers all trying to get around the other one. Like, there's very little human involvement with this stuff at this point. Hell, when you go for an interview now, it's not even like seeing somebody directly in person. It's you go on a Zoom call and their whole background is some green screen. Just everything is fake. But to go back to that demoralizing factor, right, where they sort of create in you this expectation that you're going to receive nothing no matter what you do. That chauffeur job is a good example, because I was unwilling to print out to have the DMV or driving record printouts because of the amount of time that was given to me, right? The like less than 24 hours to go and be able to log into the website and go to some printout place. And, just it was, I didn't think I had enough time to do all of that. But also, even if you did that, you're talking about a job that they're already training people for, and you being hired is contingent on if these other people that they're currently training to do this crap decide to stay with it. You're gonna like go through the hassle of getting something most people normally wouldn't just have on them, so you can be an official understudy for a job. Another good example, I go to this job agency, and this place, they want me to have my license and the social security card. Now, most places I've applied to over the past several years, a picture of your social security card is fine. That's enough, because it's a photo that shows it exists. For some goddamn reason, they wanted to see the actual thing in person. This is a big problem because I don't keep it somewhere that I just can go and grab it and whatever. And I had to, and like, this is an interview supposed to take place on Monday, but like, I just kept thinking to myself, with all the times I've twisted myself into a pretzel trying to work somewhere, right? Driving to some interview that's 20, 30, 40 miles away. Having some resume that has stuff on there that I think they'll like, or having reference numbers for people that will attest that I have the skills they want. Like, with all the different times that you have tried that tactic and it hasn't worked out for you. Because I'm having a little bit of difficulty acquiring the social security card, but just with all the times I have, again, twisted myself in pretzels trying and bent over backwards to appeal to these places, can I honestly believe that if I go in for this interview on Monday with the two things that they want, that I'm going to be hired and end up with a job where I can suddenly, afford to like live decently, and they won't try to get rid of me after 2 shifts like that stupid delivery driver job? Can I truly say to myself that this position, if I just strain myself a little bit more by going and getting this thing that I normally don't even like to have on me, can I truly say that that this place is going to be the one that finally turns the tide? And I can't. But it's like, you can call that pessimism. You can call that, me creating, I guess, supposedly a self-fulfilling prophecy. But honestly, at a certain point, you just get sick of it. Like, for example, I go to this interview with it's about 30 miles away from me, just like the other one, and they are a warehouse part-time job. I talked about them in another video. I think it was called my new job interview or something. But I go to this place, and as I'm first, the person who's supposed to interview me is not there, so the other lady decides to do it, and then she's like, "Oh, on your resume, you don't have any reference numbers. No, you don't seem to stay anywhere that long," because apparently people are just known for working at fast food places for 5 years. But as I was sitting there and just thinking about that, and also the fact that she was like, "Oh, well, we'll call you back if we in a few days after we verify your reference numbers, and then we'll have you in for a second interview, and if that goes well, then we'll have you come in and test to see if you're a good fit." And I'm thinking to myself, here's a job where it's crappy, right? You're talking about 4 or 5 hour shifts for most days of the week, but half shifts again for most days of the week. 30 miles away from me, 60 miles to and back. So not a good job, not a great job. Something is better than nothing, even if it's still not really that much. But it's like, here's a job that's not even that good, and you've driven this far away for it. You have like all these different positions on here, and of course they didn't call me back in 2 days or 3 days, whatever. But I said to myself, honestly, do I really believe there was anything else I could have done when you're talking about how many applicants you have applying? This is what I said about how, like, if you start to believe that these jobs are so great and amazing that when they don't pick you out of the however many people they have applying for them, you're that's like a symptom of you being a bad person who's not well suited enough to articulate why they should be hired. You'll go insane. And that's where I want to kind of like sort of venture off for a second about the aspect of this I find really interesting. So whenever I talk about how hard it is to get a job, there's always something that happens where a random person I've never seen before comes on there and they basically rub salt in the wound, or they try to like give some suggestion that is not actually based around being helpful. Good example of this is where when I did my Hire to Fire Strikes Again video, you had this guy that was like, if you can't last anywhere longer than a month, there's clearly something wrong with you. Even though I lasted at the restaurant for a year and a half, but he conveniently leaves that part out. I didn't mention the video because that video was about the pattern of places you start working at and then they get rid of you after a few weeks. But that's one example. When I did my Getting a Job is Impossible video, I have a guy going there talking about go back to school and get a certificate. And I read that stuff, and look, it's easy to dispatch of this crap, right? People who think that getting a piece of paper is going to give you a good job, I genuinely feel bad for you, because there are a lot of people who are going to college, getting out, and then having a hard time finding a job where employers talking about they're overqualified. All just nonsense, right? But in the way, again, this is like why I said that this stuff is really dangerous for your mental health, because if we were to just like rewind the clock to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, right? Because I would apply for stuff in person mostly back in like 2016. But if we were to rewind the clock to these earlier periods, you would see where a person would go into a restaurant or a business right after they see a now hiring sign. Maybe they don't get the interview that day, they get in a few days. They apply for something, right? They talk to the manager. Maybe they get hired, maybe they don't. And if they don't get hired, they'll talk to probably like a couple of people about why what went wrong. Maybe they'll get some feedback from those people, because that's how I used to be when I first started applying for stuff. You apply for a job. If you don't hear anything back, maybe you roll your eyes, all right, whatever, apply for something else. Maybe you have a person like, for me, it was my grandmother, my grandfather, my friend, who will say, hey, you need to try this maybe. But again, it's mostly contained to just a few people. Human beings are not supposed to have certain excessive levels of antagonism or support levied at them just while they're in the middle of like normal affairs. So again, if you apply for a job and that one doesn't go through, and then you apply for another 10 or 20 or 30, and then you hear nothing back, or you're getting rejection emails, which again it should not be, it's not normal to like hear to go from thanks, hey, we got your application, but we're not even going to talk to you. No thanks. That's not normal. But if you take that, the most responses being either dead air, dead silence, or thanks but no thanks, and then you add on top of that 5, 10, 15 people every year saying, oh, you didn't get hired because you're not good enough, you would go insane, because you're being constantly given this stream of negativity that's really unearned. I always say that for me, I'm not, because there's this, people have perceptions, whatever, but I don't consider myself some exceptionally confident person in terms of, like I get a little bit nervous when I see certain things, or if I just start working somewhere, I'm a lot more inclined to kind of have wear a mask in a general sense. When I'm somewhere longer and I feel more comfortable, then I'm more open to showing off my actual personality. But the reason I don't fall for a lot of this crap, like I still get depressed over not being unemployed, that still like bugs me, but the reason I don't fall for this argument of, oh well, it must be because you're doing something wrong, is because we have seen this song and dance before. We have data that shows us it's not, I don't exist in a vacuum. It's not just me. We're looking at an entire genre on YouTube of people talking about how hard it is to get a job. You're seeing posts on other websites about the same thing. You're seeing polls, right, showing the largest number of layoffs in 5 years. At this point, you're 58% less likely to get hired somewhere than you were last year. I mean, if anyone tells you that you specifically are the issue, they're lying. It's just blatant dishonesty. When you have that kind of data available and you're like, oh, well, see, this one guy, if he wore something different, if he, did this. And again, it's like, not all advice or commentary, is like just bad and horrible. But again, you have to ask yourself, what benefit is there to having someone who is clearly trying to work, right? That's why they apply for stuff. We don't get paid to apply for work, even though it feels like a job to apply for work. I can assure you, in the U.S., you don't get paid for trying to, get your foot in the door in like 15 or 16 different places every day. But there's very clearly no incentive to do this other than just wanting to work. And I don't see what good comes out of taking someone who wants to work and kicking them while they're down, right? And that's why I said, if you allow people, if you allow the constant rejections, oftentimes very demoralizing, because like I said, they're not even talking to you, to like, you take that and you internalize along with the stuff these people are saying about how, you need to have a better resume and wear this and all. If you really sit there and believe in that crap, it will drive you insane. And like I said, the human element of this stuff is extremely important. I've had plenty of days where I just wake up and I'm like, oh, here we go again. Gonna go back on one of these job websites and apply for some more stuff that probably doesn't even mostly exist. And then whatever does exist is not an actual job that they're offering, just another fake posting to make the people working there sweat bullets about being replaced by someone. Yay. I feel that exact same frustration. But when you add in, right, because I guess for me, like I said, most places will say nothing back, right? So employers have the option, if they really just do not want to be bothered with you, just don't even respond, right? Just act like it doesn't even exist. But they respond not to say, hey, let's give it a shot, let me talk to you. They respond to say, oh, you're not even good enough to be considered to talk to. You're not even worth our time to interact with. And that's terrible. That's ridiculous. And again, it goes back to, remember, like we had to, there was this whole thing I said earlier in the video when I was talking about my restaurant job, about how by the time I was in my last 6-7 months there, I knew they didn't appreciate me. I was just a body. And for a lot of these employers, that's what their employees are that's what people are, whether they're employees or are people who are trying to be employees. They see us, they see like people applying as basically a bunch of gnats, just all circling around trying to, get whatever food item that they think they are. And for that reason, they just swat everyone away with these very quick rejections without even speaking to a lot of the people. They have these AI systems, like I said earlier, that will go and review uh, applications and determine based off of what you have on yours. Are you worth talking to? Should we ignore you too? And again, this is really sad because the human element of working has been almost completely destroyed. Like you can't even talk to a person who works there anymore in the pursuit of trying to get a job. You go on one of these websites where a bunch of faceless companies see your resume and they have the option to turn it down without even talking to the person that is behind it. They see to them you are a sheet that they might not even look at with their own eyes. They might have their computer do it for them. And that's why I said a lot of this stuff is evolving in ways that are really dangerous. In the richest country in the world, the good old capitalist system of the United States, you're not supposed to struggle to find employment. Like when you have an essential thing that you need to survive, right? And you're willing to do a lot of, and that's again like kills that whole argument they made before about get this thing in this specific field. When you apply for jobs, it could be a warehouse position, a restaurant position, a delivery driver job. When the applications are flying out the window and it's for all this diverse stuff and you can't find anything, there is something wrong with that. And it speaks to a bigger issue than just, oh, well, see, this guy, he's just not good enough for anybody, He's just not equipped to work here or there or there or there or there or there. And like I said, I think a lot of it is self-inflicted by the employers. I think many of them either have overhired in the past and they're trying to, again, cut back. And they overhire because they don't want to, use full-time people because that means they have to spend more money on them with benefits and whatever. So that's one strategy. But it's very, it's sickening because it's a lot, the lack of available positions for people is creating this effect where jobs that are not good are like now allowed to pretend that they're great. So just as an example, I said that this warehouse job was not good because again, you're talking about 20 hours a week, at this point, but because they have so many people applying, they're acting like you're this is an application to be CEO of Microsoft with paid time off and a 401k, and it's like this is a joke. This is only slightly better than having nothing, because even if you get hired by them, you still can't afford to live anywhere off of what you're making from there. I mean, when we get to a point where there are 700 or 800 people, including some college graduates, applying for a janitor job, the rotten society is kind of showing its spoils. And I never thought I'd see the day where, because even with the customer service jobs, I had people applying for those who claim to have master's degrees and PhDs. I'm just like, what the hell? If these papers are so good, why are they seeking out the same kind of jobs as me? Jobs that don't require you to have one of those. Now, of course, with the degree, you can have better bargaining power in terms of, oh, I want to get paid $5 more or $6 more. But the point is, like, what good is the bargaining power if you're still struggling to even be given offers? Like it used to be, you get a degree, and then suddenly there's all these different positions across the United States available to you. Hey, I got a degree as a teacher. Oh, this preschool wants to hire me. This high school wants to hire me. This other school over here wants to hire me. And they're in this town, that town. But now whether you have the piece of paper or not, you can't even just be guaranteed a job. And it's so rotten. Like, I was just kind of thinking about this the other day. I said, I go to a lot of the same places, this library, the mall, um, and you wonder, because I've been going to these places for at least a full year, right, with each one of them, and I see the same employees working there week after week, month after month, and like I said, the economy is structured in such a way that there's a lot of firing and not really that much hiring. So like people who are in a job, even if it's not that great, they'll stay with it, and so the amount of people getting let go is kind of like diminishing or dropping, but the ability to like actually just begin working somewhere that's like also becoming smaller. And it's gotten to a point where the only stuff that wants to hire people are some of the crappy jobs that are so bad that they're getting rid of, or making it to where nobody wants to work for them for more than a few uh, days or weeks. I mean, that guy came on my video and basically self-destructed to protect his sacred what was it, customer service job, waifu. But ask yourself, if you're a regular person that just wants to work, just wants to be able to take care of yourself, maybe have a few days off, would you really be excited to go and knock on doors? And then if you don't sell enough of whatever item, they can just be like, all right, well, goodbye, after you've paid out $200 or $300 for some suits to look presentable according to them, for again a job that no guaranteed amount of money other than whatever is like below minimum wage, but they get to guarantee that you have to work for them 6 days a week. I mean, I don't see where anybody would want that, and that's why they are constantly having to cycle through people, because someone signs up, they think maybe they can do it, they either find out something afterward, or whatever they thought before gets out of their head and they leave. And I don't blame them. It's a terrible job. Same thing with these delivery driver jobs. The only thing they have going for them is that most of them tend to be full time, but not the one I was with, bizarrely. But you get the idea that the stuff that is available in terms of you could probably get hired there, it's bad, it's trash, and there again, this is emblematic of something bigger than the supposed personal failings of me, or applicant B or applicant C. There is some systemic rot in the idea of people having to pass out hundreds or thousands of applications every year just to work somewhere. I really never thought I would just get to a point of, oh, I can't wait to wake up today and go on this website and see all the new job postings, which are going to be the same exact ones as last month, because whoever they hired didn't last, or if they probably aren't hiring anybody, but they just keep reposting to keep gathering more information, or to scare the people working for them. And that's what's so scary, between the fake job postings, the places that will hire but then not give enough hours for someone to even be able to like make anything off working there, and the increased cost of living. It just seems like it's leading to a desolate wasteland. Like, I don't think I've ever been more discouraged for the future than now. um and that's what's, again, like, going back to the whole depression thing, because if I just sat here and like didn't apply for stuff, right, didn't just never sent an application, never sat there and drove to all those different interviews, I would be I wouldn't necessarily say, aha, you deserve to like die, but I would be more like understanding of someone like pointing their finger and going, you're no good. But what is there to say when somebody applies for work over and over again? They are willing to try to either do or at least try most jobs, and they can't land anything. They're just gonna have to sit there and like not be able to work. week after week, month after month. I, I don't see how people, again, in what is supposed to be the richest country in the world, can think it's normal for someone to have to apply for hundreds or thousands of jobs every year and still possibly end up with nothing. And point the finger at that person and say they either don't want to work or they're not applying hard enough. You need to put in 4,000 applications every month. Yeah. Start your own business. Doing what? I don't know. Start your own business, which will cost even more money. I mean, it's sad, man. It really is. And I wish I could give a more uplifting response. I guess I can say that, you know, if you ever have felt that, oh my God, something must be wrong with me, that I would discourage that. I would say that you're not alone, in a sense of, you know, people are having this issue all around. But again, things like housing and food and jobs, that's stuff that people should have. And if people are willing to do the necessary work to get that stuff, it should come in spades. You shouldn't have to have a degree to have a slightly higher chance of getting a job than somebody else, a regular entry level job, mind you. And you shouldn't have to go through 2, 3, 4 rounds of interviews and tryouts before you can work somewhere. You shouldn't have to drive 20, 30 miles from your house to work somewhere. I mean, it's bad. And it's really scary. But like I said, that loop of, you know, people writing, oh, well, you need to try this or try that or try this or try, like this one guy, for example, told me to go to a job agency, and that's what's leading me to this whole convoluted saga of having to dig up the physical social security card, because a picture just isn't enough for these people. But at least with that person, it's like a tangible, specific thing you can do that isn't, you know, go and pay out $3, $4, $5,000 a year to go to some school. So it's for, and who knows how you'll afford anything in the middle, but we don't think about that part. Just to, you know, get this paper that may or may not change things. But most of the guys writing that stuff online, I would encourage to ignore them. They are still operating on the lie that this is something that is a reflection of a moral failing, of a personal failing, excuse me, which is why they sit there and they specifically go after that one person or a group of people for why they're having trouble with getting a job. Oh, you're not trying hard enough. Oh, you wore this, even though they don't see what you look like. Oh, maybe it's your application. Maybe you don't have the magic resume. And everyone's in pursuance of the insta-fix instead of just actually sitting there and going, yeah, this is bad. So I'm not looking forward to whatever is coming after this. I think it's going to be more time wasting, more false hopes. Because when I was, just to close this out, when I was hired by that delivery driver job, I was very excited, right? Because their hours were stable in terms, okay, even if it's part-time, I know it'll be this hour to this hour, this day, or that at least twice or 3 times a week. If you get one shift, it's still 8 hours, we know that, or 10 or whatever. And I was willing to try learning how to do this stuff, but we saw what happened. I had a first day that wasn't that great, a second one that was, I would say, much better, and they agreed with me. And then by the time I got to the third one, they had not used me for almost half a month, and then were threatening to fire me after depending on my performance of the third day. And I just said, you know what, I'm not jumping through that hoop. We've seen this song and dance before. But that's why I said, like, when you give me something that looks like it could be different, and then it turns out to be more of the same, I just recoil. I'm like, oh, here we go again. And it really strips away your hope, because you're like, well, I thought this was going to, you know, be some kind of like sign of an improvement, but it was just a false start. It was just another cruel joke. It was just a more delaying of the inevitable. The status quo for me is that I'll either be unemployed or I'll be working somewhere where they use me so sparingly that I'm just sitting there like, what the hell am I even doing here? Because like when those last months at the restaurant, I was like, why am I only getting a single shift a week? What is that? You know, like when you are available 6 days a week, right? And like you had a time where you were getting used 3-4 days a week, and all of a sudden it's down to just this singular usage. It drives you nuts. And then on top of that, you're also like applying for other stuff, and if they even respond, it's so you go to an interview where they don't show up, they stand you up, or some place where they turn you down for reason X, Y, and Z for unknown miscellaneous reason. It's like that stuff will really drive you nuts. Because again, it's not, and people always talk about, and they've been doing this to me for a long time. You must have something wrong with you. Go to a therapist. You must have a mental illness. I said, if I ever believed I had something wrong with me, it would be entirely based around there being something wrong with society. Society is so damn backwards that a person who wants to work can barely get any hours. A person who wants to work can work at 2-3 places and never be guaranteed that they're going to get 40 hours, but damn sure be guaranteed that all the jobs are going to clash with each other time and time again, which is one of the reasons why I don't try to have 2 jobs anymore, because every time I tried, they always overlap because they're unstable. And look, it's easy to keep pointing fingers at that person, but nobody ever wants to answer the question, why is that person really, do they have something wrong with them, or is there something wrong with what is being done to them and every damn body else just trying to survive? And it's been a theme where it feels like no matter how rich a company is, like that restaurant I was with, Franchise Place, the owners got, I think, net worth of 10 million, so whatever. But it seems like no matter where you work, every employer, because they're psychotic, they are trying as hard as they can to take something away from you or to screw you out of as much money as possible. It's like you work at this restaurant, and with all their resources, with all their sales, with all those days you worked and did stuff for them, even on days you weren't even scheduled to work there, you can only get by the last several months of working there $100 a week, or I guess 90 something after they take out taxes. That's all they can afford to use you for. They're so poor. You go to these again, these interviews, and they are so qualified, they're so elite that you just can't measure up to their standard, whatever it is. And that's why I said this is not healthy to internalize. You have to look at the system, say it's rigged, it's screwed up, it's rotten, and just we'll try some more stuff with it, right? Because I've never been to a job agency up until this week. But if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to pretend I'm surprised. So I wish I could have a more uplifting conclusion, but I will say the one solace I've taken from watching all the videos and reading all the different things people have written about how hard it is to get work somewhere is that I know this is not a me issue. It is something that is destroying the very fabric of the workforce. Like, I will never believe, I don't care how many times they insult me, that it's normal for someone to have to apply to hundreds or thousands of jobs every year just to get an interview and maybe a job offer. Utterly absurd.